There are fires that destroy everything, and there are fires that forge the soul. This is a story about a man made of iron and steel and an Apache woman who taught him that even the hardest metal can learn to bend. September 12, 1871. Red Rock Canyon, Arizona Territory. The sound echoed through the valley like a heartbeat. Clang, clang, clang. In the dim light of the forge, a massive figure bent over glowing steel hammer raised sweat dripping from a dark beard flecked with gray. Thomas Brennan, called Big Tom by the few who knew him, had lived alone in these mountains for 3 years. Not because he loved solitude, but because the world below demanded he become something he no longer wanted to be. They called him Big Tom not from pride but from simple truth. 6'5", 250 pounds, shoulders broad enough to block out sunlight when he stood in a doorway. But his hands told a different story. Calloused from 20 years of working iron, burned scars across every knuckle, fingernails permanently blackened with coal dust. Yet when those hands held red-hot steel, they moved like a dancer's, controlled, precise, almost gentle. That morning Tom was finishing a set of horseshoes for a trader due on Saturday. Simple work, peaceful work, work that required no eye contact, no explanations, no memories of the man he used to be. Then the wind shifted. Tom stopped mid-swing hammer, frozen in the air. His nose caught something that made his gut clench. Not the clean smell of his own coal fire, not the sharp scent of pine, but the sickly sweet stench of burning flesh mixed with gunpowder and something else, something terrible he'd smelled 3 years before and prayed never to smell again. The hammer fell from his hand. The steel cooled on the anvil, forgotten. 3 years ago, Thomas Brennan had turned his back on tragedy and lost everything. Today, he would run straight into another. And what he found in the ashes would change him forever. Tom didn't reach for a gun. He'd thrown every weapon into a mountain ravine 3 years back, vowing never to touch one again. Instead, he grabbed a large knife, 2 canteens of water, and a canvas bag with bandages and healing salve. Then he ran. Down the mountain he went, legs pumping hard. 3 years at 6,800 feet had turned his legs to oak. He moved fast but quiet boots, finding purchase on loose rock without thinking. 12 minutes later he reached the site. 3 wickiups, traditional Apache lodges made of bent saplings and animal hide, had burned to their blackened frames. No more flames, just thin smoke rising from ash. 8 bodies lay in the clearing, women and children. They'd been arranged in a neat line after death, which somehow made it worse. Someone had stopped to clean up their massacre. Tom's heart hammered, not with fear but with rage. He knew this signature. Only one man operated this way. "Crow," he whispered. He forced himself to search for survivors. Fresh blood on stone. Small footprints, staggering and desperate, leading into the pine forest. Someone had escaped. Tom followed the trail using skills from his army days. Skills he hated but was grateful for now. 200 yards into the forest, beneath an outcropping of red rock, he found her. She lay crumpled like a broken doll face, black with soot, long braided hair tangled with ash. Her deerskin clothing was torn, burned in places. But what made Tom stop was her hand still gripping a small knife, even in unconsciousness. Even in defeat she remained a warrior. Tom knelt slowly, checking her pulse. Weak but steady. He dampened a cloth and began wiping her face gently. Her eyes snapped open, black as midnight and wild as a cornered animal. Seeing him, a massive white man looming over her, she drove the knife upward with the last of her strength. Tom rolled sideways, the blade missing his ribs by inches. He raised both hands, palms open and empty. "I'm not a soldier," he said, voice low and steady. "No gun, just water." She stared at him, eyes full of suspicion and agony. But her body had nothing left. The knife slipped from her fingers. Tom quickly wrapped the worst cuts on her arms, not romanticizing the moment, just practical first aid. Then he lifted her. At 250, he could carry a full-grown deer without strain. This woman weighed nothing, but the responsibility weighed more than iron. "Shiu Hojo," he said in broken Apache, one of the few phrases he knew. "Come with me to safety." She didn't answer, but her head tilted against his shoulder, not from trust, but from having no choice left. It was enough. Tom began climbing back up the mountain, carrying this woman and the duty that came with her. The cabin sat another 1,000 feet up, hidden in a fold of red rock that most men would never find. Tom laid her on his only bed, a frame stuffed with deer hide and covered with thick wool blankets. He would sleep on the floor tonight, and for however many nights it took. The cabin was small but oddly clean for a man living alone. Stone fireplace, wooden table worn smooth from use, blacksmith tools hung in perfect order on the wall, and in one corner an old guitar gathering dust, the only remnant of his life before. Tom didn't touch her right away. He understood what it felt like to be touched when vulnerable. Instead, he built up the fire, set water to boil, laid out clean cloth, every movement slow and predictable, letting her know where he was and what he was doing if she woke. No surprises. Then he sat on a wooden stool 3 feet from the bed, placed his massive hands on his knees, and waited motionless as stone. 10 minutes passed. She opened her eyes. This time she didn't attack, just observed. Her gaze swept the room, cataloging exits, potential weapons, threats. Tom didn't move. Let her look. Finally her eyes settled on him. "Water," Tom said, pointing to a cup on the table. "And soup, when you're ready." She didn't move, just watched. Tom understood. He stood slowly, telegraphing every motion, and walked outside. 15 minutes later he returned with a bowl of simple venison broth and a piece of cornbread. He set it on the table and stepped back. "It's not good," he admitted. "I'm no cook, but it's hot, and it's clean." She stared at the bowl, then at him. "Why? Why what? Why did you save me?" A direct question deserved a direct answer. Tom sat on the floor, making himself lower than her, less threatening. 3 years ago I stood in another Apache village. I had a rifle. My commanding officer ordered us to shoot women and children. I said no. He paused, swallowing hard. But I said no too late. Many died before I found courage. He looked up, meeting her eyes. Today I got there sooner. Not soon enough to save everyone, but soon enough to save you. That's the only reason I need. She studied him for a long moment. "You were a soldier." "Was. Not anymore." "You deserted." "Yes. And my wife died because of it." He offered no elaboration. None was needed. Simple truth carried more weight than any story. She gave a small nod, not forgiveness, but understanding. She set down the knife, picked up the bowl, ate. Tom stood. "My name is Thomas. Tom. Naichi." No handshake, no smile. Just 2 names exchanged between strangers who shared loss. It was a first step. "You can sleep in the bed tonight," Tom said. "I'll sleep by the forge. The door has no lock from outside. You can leave any time you want." "You're not afraid I'll leave?" "I'm more afraid you'll stay because you feel trapped." Naichi looked at him, really looked for the first time. She didn't see a good man trying to save his soul. She saw a decent man trying to do right. "I'll stay tonight," she said. "Tomorrow we talk." Tom woke at dawn as always. He'd slept on the forge floor near the banked coals, close enough for warmth but far enough to give her space. He checked the cabin, door still closed. Naichi was still there. A small knot of worry loosened in his chest. He began work, but not the loud hammer work. Quiet repair, sharpening blades, checking tools, keeping his hands busy while his mind spun. An hour later the door opened. Naichi stepped out. Still weak, he could see it in how she braced against the doorframe, but standing. And her eyes were clearer, more alert. "You have food?" she asked. "Yes, in the cabin. Bread and dried meat." She nodded, went back inside. 5 minutes later emerged with a piece of bread in hand, eating while she watched him work. Tom was trying to tie a leather cord to hang a tool. His large hands fumbled with the knot, making a mess of it. "You're doing it wrong," Nietzsche said. Tom stopped, looked at her. She stepped forward, held out her hand. "Let me." Tom handed her the cord. She executed a complex knot, an Apache bowline tight but easily released when needed. Done in 5 seconds flat. "That's right," she said, handing it back. Tom examined the knot, a small smile appearing in his beard. "You're right. I only know sailor's knots. Not good for mountains." "Who taught you?" "My father. He worked on the Mississippi River." Nietzsche nodded. Silence settled, but comfortable now. Tom returned to the forge, began arranging coal. Nietzsche followed, standing in the doorway, watching. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Preparing fire. I'll forge a knife later." "A knife for what?" "To sell. Traders buy, I trade for supplies." Nietzsche stepped into the forge, moving cautiously like entering an animal's den. She looked around. Hammers, tongs, anvil, furnace. Tools of creation, not destruction. "Can you teach me?" The question surprised them both. Tom turned genuinely startled. "Blacksmithing?" "Yes. If I'm here, I need skills. Can't just sit." Tom thought about it, then nodded. "All right, but not today. Your hands still shake." Nietzsche looked down at her hands. They did tremble slightly from weakness. "Tomorrow," Tom said. "Today you rest. Eat. Get your strength back." "And you?" "I work. It's what I know." When Tom turned back to his organizing, Nietzsche didn't go inside. She sat on a sun-warmed rock nearby, watching him work. No words passed between them, just the sound of wind in the pines and metal touching metal as Tom checked his tools. After a while, Nietzsche spoke softly. "Ashkey liked watching people work, too." Tom stopped. "Ashkey, my brother, 8 years old." Her voice cracked. "He died 2 days ago. In the lodge." Tom set down his hammer, turned to look at her. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." Those words meant nothing. Instead, what did he like to watch? Nietzsche seemed surprised by the question. Everything. Wood carving, basket weaving. He wanted to learn it all. "Was he good?" "Yes, very good with his hands." A small, sad smile. "Small hands, but strong." Tom nodded. "When you learn to forge, you'll remember him. And when you teach others, he'll live through your work." Nietzsche looked at him, eyes bright with tears that didn't fall. Apache didn't cry before strangers, but she nodded. She understood. This was the respect that reached deep. Legacy, purpose, memory. The things that mattered most. The scene shifted. 50 miles east, Fort Bowie. Late afternoon of the same day. Captain Henry Crow stood before a map in his command office, finger-tapping on the Chiricahua Mountains. Tall, lean, with ice-blue eyes and a yellow mustache. A scar ran across his forehead from an old fight. He looked like what he was, a man who believed absolutely in his own righteousness. "Lieutenant Hayes," he called without looking up. "Sir." James Hayes entered, standing at attention. 28 brown eyes warmed despite his uniform freckles across his nose. "Report on yesterday's operation." Hayes swallowed. 9 targets neutralized, sir. No casualties on our side." 9? Crow turned those cold eyes fixing on Hayes. "That village had 10 people. Perhaps one was hunting earlier, sir, or one escaped." Crow stepped closer, 2 inches taller. "And now a witness is out there somewhere, possibly talking to a marshal, or to those bleeding heart journalists from back east." Hayes stood rigid. He'd been at that village. He'd counted the bodies, too, and he'd been sick behind a tree after where no one could see. "What would you have me do, sir?" "Find that survivor, or the body. I don't care which." Crow turned back to the map. "And if someone's hiding them, deal with it as treason." "That's an order." Hayes stiffened. "Sir, if it's a civilian—" "There are no civilians in a war with Apache, Hayes." Crow's voice could cut glass. "Only allies and enemies. Which side are you on?" Hayes stood frozen. In his mind flashed images from 3 years ago, a different village when he was 25 and new, the screaming, the children. "I'm on the side of the law, sir." "Good, because I am the law out here." Crow turned his back, dismissing him. "You're dismissed." Hayes walked out. In the hallway he passed Sergeant Cole Dutch, a hulking man with burn scars covering half his face, a souvenir from a powder explosion years back. "Here we're going hunting for Apache, Lieutenant." Dutch grinned, showing gaps in his teeth. "I do love a good hunt." Hayes didn't answer, just kept walking. But inside a decision was forming, a decision that would matter. Back at the cabin, sunset painted the mountains orange and purple. Tom was lighting an oil lamp inside when Naichi spoke from the window. "They'll look for me," she said quietly. "I know. And when they find me, you'll be in danger." Tom came to stand beside her. "Then we make sure they don't find you." Naichi turned to look at him. "Why are you doing this?" "You don't know me." Tom was silent for a moment. Then, "For 3 years I've lived like a coward, hiding in these mountains, avoiding everyone. I thought that was surviving. But when I found you in those ashes, I realized I wasn't surviving. I was just waiting to die. And now, for the first time in 3 years, I have a reason to live." Naichi looked at him, no words in response, but a small understanding beginning to form. Outside, the first stars appeared. The temperature dropped. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Tom added wood to the fire, the flames catching and growing. Naichi sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a cup of hot tea Tom had made. "In my village," she said suddenly, "there was an elder. She used to say that the spirits send us what we need, not what we want." Tom looked up from the fire. "I wanted my family alive. I wanted my home. I wanted revenge." Naichi stared into her cup. "Instead, the spirits sent me you, a white man who makes things instead of breaking them. I don't understand it yet." "Maybe you're not supposed to understand yet," Tom said. "Maybe you're just supposed to survive until understanding comes." "Is that what you've been doing? Surviving until understanding comes?" Tom considered this. "No. I've been hiding until I forgot why I was hiding. That's different." Naichi almost smiled. "You're honest. Most white men lie. Most men lie, period. Color doesn't matter." This time she did smile just a little. The first real smile since the world burned. It changed her face, made her look younger, less like a warrior, and more like a woman who'd once laughed easily. Tom saw it and felt something shift in his chest. Not attraction, not yet, but recognition. The recognition that this person, this stranger who spoke a different language and came from a different world, was somehow essential. That finding her in those ashes wasn't accident but necessity. He didn't understand it either. But like he'd said, maybe that was all right. The fire crackled. The night deepened. And two broken people sat in a small cabin on a mountain, neither knowing that in the weeks to come they would forge something stronger than steel. Something that would require them both to change, to bend without breaking, to trust when trust seemed impossible. But that was tomorrow's story. Tonight was just about staying alive, about choosing to wake up when morning came, about believing even for a moment that maybe the world wasn't entirely ash and smoke. Maybe somewhere beneath the ruins something could still grow. Tom banked the fire for the night. "You should sleep," he said. "Real sleep. You're safe here." Naichi looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded and went to the bed. Tom took his blanket and went back to the forge floor. But before she closed the cabin door, she said one more thing. "Tom." He turned. "Thank you." 2 words. Simple. But they carried the weight of everything she couldn't yet say, everything she didn't yet know how to feel. Tom nodded. "Sleep well, Naichi." The door closed. Tom lay down on the hard floor, staring up at the rafters. 3 years ago he'd lost his wife and his honor in one terrible month. 3 years ago he'd climbed into these mountains determined to disappear. Tonight, lying on cold stone with a stranger sleeping in his cabin and soldiers potentially hunting them both, Thomas Brennan felt more alive than he had in 1,000 days. Tomorrow they would talk more. Tomorrow she might leave. Tomorrow everything might fall apart. But tomorrow wasn't here yet. And tonight, for the first time since Sarah died, Tom fell asleep without nightmares. The forge fire glowed softly in the darkness. Outside, an owl called. The mountains stood eternal, keeping their secrets. And in a small cabin made of logs and determination, two people who should have been enemies rested under the same roof, both wondering what dawn would bring. Neither of them knew that 50 miles away, Captain Crow was already studying maps, planning search patterns, preparing to hunt. Neither knew that Lieutenant Hayes was lying awake in his bunk, wrestling with conscience. Neither knew that an old shopkeeper named Sam Hutchins had noticed Tom's absence and was starting to worry. But they would learn. In the days to come, they would learn that choosing to do right was only the beginning. That safety was an illusion. That trust was earned in inches, not miles. And they would learn that sometimes the only way to forge something unbreakable was to throw it into fire again and again until all the weakness burned away and only the essential remained. But tonight there was just silence, just rest, just the small miracle of two people breathing under stars that had watched this land long before white men or Apache walked it and would watch long after both were dust. The mountain held them. The night protected them. And somewhere in the darkness the first thin threads of connection began to weave between two souls who had every reason to hate each other and one growing reason not to. Dawn came slowly to Red Rock Canyon, painting the eastern sky in shades of copper and gold. Tom woke as he always did at first light, his body trained by years of blacksmith's hours. He lay still for a moment on the hard forge floor, listening. No sound from the cabin. Good. Naichi was still sleeping, still there. The small knot of worry that had lived in his chest since yesterday loosened another degree. He rose quietly, joints popping after a night on stone. At 42, his body remembered every hard choice he'd made. He stepped outside into air so cold it burned his lungs, breath misting in the early light. The mountains stretched endlessly around him, indifferent to human drama. They'd been here before the Apache, before the Spanish, before anyone had names for things. They'd be here long after. Tom walked to the creek that ran 30 yards from his forge, splashed icy water on his face and beard, scrubbed his hands. The ritual of beginning. Then back to the forge to bank the coals properly, add kindling, prepare for the day. Not loud hammer work yet, just the quiet tasks. Sharpening blades on the whetstone, checking tool handles, oiling hinges, keeping his hands busy while his mind settled. An hour passed. The sun cleared the eastern peaks. The cabin door opened. Naichi stepped out. She looked stronger today, still pale beneath her bronze skin, still moving carefully but with purpose now, instead of just survival. She'd braided her long black hair properly, secured it with a strip of leather. She wore the oversized wool shirt Tom had left for her sleeves rolled up over her deerskin leggings that she'd repaired with sinew from his supplies. Her eyes were clear, alert, taking in everything. "You have food?" she asked. Tom pointed toward the cabin. "Cornbread on the table, dried venison in the tin, coffee's hot if you want it." She nodded and went back inside. 5 minutes later she emerged with cornbread in one hand, a cup of black coffee in the other. She ate slowly, standing in the doorway, watching him work the whetstone across a blade. The rhythmic scraping sound filled the morning. "That knife," she said after a while. "What's it for? Hunting. Man in Silver Creek ordered it last month. Due next week." "You make what people ask for." "Mostly. Sometimes I make what I think they need." Tom held the blade up to the light, checking the edge. "Not always the same thing." Naichi sipped her coffee, considering this. "In my village, we had a man who made arrows. He said the best arrows weren't the ones warriors asked for. They were the ones that flew true even when the warrior's hand shook. Tom smiled slightly. Smart man. He died 2 days ago. The smile vanished. Tom set down the knife. I'm sorry. Don't be. He was old. He said he was ready. Nietzsche looked out at the mountains. He said dying wasn't hard. Living well, that was the hard part. Tom had no answer to that. He picked up the knife again, kept sharpening. After a moment, Nietzsche sat on the rock where she'd sat yesterday, the one warmed by morning sun. She watched him work, and he let her watch, understanding that sometimes observation was its own kind of healing. You said you'd teach me, she said after a while. Tom looked up. Today? Why not today? Your hands still shake when you're tired. Then teach me before I'm tired. There was steel in her voice. Not anger, just determination. Tom studied her. Saw in her face what he'd seen in his own mirror years ago before Sarah died, before everything fell apart. The need to create something, anything, to prove to yourself you still existed beyond your pain. All right, he said, but we start slow. He led her into the forge, a simple structure open on 3 sides, roofed with cedar shakes he'd split himself. The furnace dominated one wall built from river stone and clay. The anvil stood in the center, a 200-pound mass of iron on an oak stump. Tools hung on the walls in perfect order, hammers of every size, tongs with different jaw shapes, files, punches, chisels, everything in its place. First rule, Tom said. Fire isn't your enemy. It's your first teacher. He pointed to the furnace where coals glowed orange. See the colors? Bright red means too hot. The steel will burn, become brittle. Dark orange, that's forging temperature. Steel is soft enough to shape but strong enough not to tear. Deep red means it's cooling time to heat it again. Nietzsche leaned closer, studying the gradations of color. How do you know exactly? Experience, but also... Tom picked up a short rod of steel, held it near her face without touching her skin. Feel that your skin tells you what your eyes might miss. She closed her eyes, concentrating, feeling the heat radiate, nodded slowly. Good. Now, Tom indicated the large leather bellows hanging beside the furnace. This is how we control the fire. Try it. Nietzsche approached the bellows cautiously. It was taller than her, constructed from leather and wood with a long wooden handle. She grasped the handle and pulled. It barely moved. She pulled harder, using both hands. The bellows wheezed, sending a weak puff of air into the furnace. Use your whole body, Tom said, like drawing a bow, not just arms. She adjusted her stance, bent her knees, pulled with her legs and back as well as arms. This time the bellows opened properly. She pushed it closed. Air rushed into the furnace and the coals brightened from orange to nearly yellow. Good. Keep going. Find a rhythm. Pull, push. Pull, push. Within a minute, sweat beaded on Nietzsche's forehead. Her forearms began to burn, but she didn't stop. Pull, push. Pull, push. The coals responded to her efforts, glowing brighter with each stroke. Tom watched, not with judgment, but with respect. She didn't complain, didn't ask how much longer, just worked. After 10 minutes, when her arms were shaking, he said, Enough. She released the bellows, stepped back, breathing hard, wiped sweat from her face with her sleeve, but in her eyes Tom saw something he hadn't seen before. Pride. Small, tentative, but real. You did well, he said simply. My arms feel like water. They'll strengthen. Everything does with time. Tom moved to the anvil, picked up a 3-pound hammer. Now watch. This is the conversation. He used tongs to pull a piece of steel from the furnace, glowing orange, laid it on the anvil, raised the hammer, brought it down. Clang. The sound rang out across the valley, pure and clean. The steel flattened slightly under the blow. See, I'm not beating it. I'm asking it to change shape. And it answers. Another strike. Clang. If you fight the steel, it fights back. If you work with it, guide it, it cooperates. Nietzsche stood close, watching every movement. Like training a horse. Tom paused mid-swing, looked at her. Exactly like that. How did you know? In my village, the old horse trainer said the same thing. The horse tells you when it's ready. You don't force it. The steel tells you too. You just have to listen. Tom set down his hammer, offered it to her. Now you try. Naichi took the hammer. It was heavier than it looked, the head dense iron, the handle worn smooth from years of use. She felt its weight tested the balance. Tom pulled out a smaller piece of steel thinner, easier to work. Heated it until it glowed orange, placed it on the anvil. Just try to flatten it. Don't worry about making anything yet. Just feel how it responds. Naichi raised the hammer, brought it down. Clang. The impact jarred her arm, but the steel barely changed. She looked at Tom. Hit it like you mean it, he said. The steel can take it. She swung again harder. Clang. Better. The steel flattened a little. Again. Clang. 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 Each strike sent vibrations up her arm. Sweat ran down her back. The morning sun climbed higher, turning the forge into an oven. But with each blow, Naichi felt something building inside her. Not just strength. Power. The power to shape things. To create instead of just endure. After 20 strikes, Tom said, "Enough for now. The steel needs reheating." Naichi lowered the hammer chest, heaving. Looked at what she'd made. The steel was flattened, stretched out, no longer the square rod it had been. Crude, uneven, but changed. She had changed it. "Not bad," Tom said. "For first time, you've got the instinct." She looked at him, and for a moment neither spoke. In that silence lived understanding. She wasn't just learning blacksmithing. She was learning that she could still affect the world. That she wasn't just a victim of what had happened, but someone who could make things happen. "Can I keep it?" she asked quietly. "What I made, it's yours. You forged it." Naichi held the misshapen piece of steel still warm, tucked it into her pocket. Her first creation in this new life she hadn't chosen, but was learning to inhabit. They worked through the morning. Tom finished the hunting knife while Naichi practiced with the bellows, getting stronger, finding the rhythm that didn't exhaust her. Around noon they stopped. The sun was directly overhead, the heat oppressive even in the shade. Tom brought out leftover rabbit from last night, warmed it over the forge fire, added some wild onions he'd gathered. They ate sitting on the bench outside the cabin, looking out over the valley. Pine forest stretched for miles, broken only by red rock outcroppings and the silver thread of the creek below. "You live here alone 3 years?" Naichi asked. "Yes." "Not lonely?" Tom chewed slowly, considering. Alone and lonely are different things. Alone is a choice. Lonely is a punishment. Naichi nodded. "You chose alone to escape a different punishment." "Something like that." Tom took a drink from his canteen. "After my wife died, I couldn't look at people anymore. I saw the question in their eyes. Why didn't you save her?" He paused, staring out at the mountains. "So I came here, where there were no eyes, no questions." "After my brother died," Naichi said softly, "I couldn't look at people either. But different reason. I saw them asking, 'Why did you live when he didn't?'" Tom turned to her. For the first time they truly saw each other. Not rescuer and rescued, not white man and Apache, but two survivors carrying guilt that had no name, no cure, only weight. "Maybe," Tom said slowly, "we didn't survive because we deserved to. Maybe we survived because the ones who died need us to remember them." Naichi looked down at her hands, hands that had held her dying brother, hands that had failed to save him, but also hands that this morning had shaped steel. "In Apache way, we believe the dead live through what we do. White people say that too. We just forget it more often." A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals, hunting. They watched it in silence. The bird dove, suddenly disappeared behind trees. Rose again a moment later, something small in its talons, life taking life to sustain life, the way of all things. "Your wife," Naichi said after a while. "What was she like?" Tom didn't answer immediately. 3 years and no one had asked him that. No one had cared enough to ask. He found his throat tight. Her name was Sarah, blonde hair like wheat, taller than most men. A small smile touched his lips. She could outshoot me, never let me forget it either. She sounds strong. She was. Strongest person I ever knew. Tom picked up a stick, drew patterns in the dust at his feet. We met in Tennessee after the war ended there. I opened a small forge. She ran a dress shop. One day she came to me with broken scissors, asked if I could fix them. He drew a circle, then another, overlapping it. I said I'd make her new ones. She said no, she wanted those fixed. They were her mother's. So I fixed them. She paid me with a new shirt. Then I made her a small hammer for leather work. She made me a scarf. We kept trading like that for 6 months. Then you married. Then we married. Tom's voice grew quieter. 2 good years. Then the money ran out. Tennessee, after the war, there was no work. We decided to go west, New Mexico, start over. But we needed money for the journey. So I joined the Army. Just for 2 years, I thought. 2 years, then we'd be free. He dropped the stick. The first year was fine. Patrols, building roads, protecting traders. I sent money home every month. Sarah saved it. But the second year, new commanding officer, Captain Crow. He had different ideas about protecting the frontier. Tom's hands clenched into fists. March of 1869. Crow led us to an Apache village near the Rio Grande. Said it was a warrior camp. But when we got there, it was just women, children, old people. The men were out hunting. Crow knew that. He chose that timing. Naichi sat very still, hardly breathing. He ordered us to shoot. I said they were civilians. He said there were no Apache civilians. 10 men in my unit refused to fire. 20 others didn't refuse. Tom's voice cracked. 35 people died. I didn't shoot, but I didn't stop it either. I wrote a report. Sent it up the chain, got rejected. Necessary action, they said, protecting the frontier. I was going to desert immediately, but Sarah said they'd hang me. She said wait until my enlistment ended. 6 more months. He stood abruptly, walked to the edge of the clearing. Naichi followed. But Crow knew I'd reported him, and he doesn't like people who report him. 1 month later I got sent on a 3-day patrol. When I came back, neighbors told me soldiers had come. Told Sarah I'd died in combat, then arrested her for helping a deserter. Tom's voice broke completely. They hanged her before I got back. Crow wasn't there himself, but it was his order. I know it. He turned to face Naichi, tears cutting clean lines through the coal dust on his face. I didn't even try to fight them. I just ran into these mountains, and I've been running for 3 years. Naichi stepped closer but didn't touch him. You couldn't have known he would do that. It was a trap. I should have known. I knew what kind of man he was. But you didn't know he would kill her. Naichi's voice was firm. Your guilt is trusting the wrong system, not letting her die. They killed her, not you. Tom looked at her. For 3 years he'd carried this weight alone. For 3 years he'd believed himself a coward and a failure. Now this Apache woman who had every reason to hate him was offering something he hadn't felt in 1,000 days. Understanding. My father used to say, Naichi continued, the worst enemy isn't the man who kills, it's the man who orders killing. You didn't kill anyone in that village. You tried to stop it. In my culture, that is bravery. Tom's shoulders shook. He wanted to protest, to argue, to insist on his guilt. But something in Naichi's eyes stopped him. She wasn't offering forgiveness. She was offering truth. And truth, he was learning, was harder to carry than guilt. Thank you, he whispered. Naichi nodded. Now you know my story. I know yours. We are equal. Not love, not yet, but respect. The foundation for everything that would come. The afternoon stretched long and golden. They returned to the forge, but the mood had shifted. The air between them was different now. Not comfortable exactly, but honest. They'd both shown their wounds. Neither had flinched. Tom worked on finishing the hunting knife. Naichi practiced with a small hammer on scraps of iron, learning the rhythm, finding her strength. The sound of metal on metal rang out across the valley, a song older than words. As the sun dropped toward the western peaks, Tom set down his tools. "I need to go to town tomorrow, need supplies, and I need to sell this knife." Naichi stopped working. "I'll come with you." "No, too dangerous. If someone sees you—" "You think I'm afraid?" "I think you're smart enough not to take unnecessary risks." Tom looked at her steadily. "Do you trust me?" The question hung between them. A big question. Maybe too big. Naichi thought about it, really thought. Then slowly she nodded. "I trust you." "Then trust me about this. I'll go. I'll be back before sunset. And I'll bring news." "What kind of news?" "Any kind. About Crow. About what the army is doing. About—" He paused. "About whether anyone else from your village survived." Naichi's eyes widened. "You think someone else might have lived?" "I don't know. But if they did, people in town will have heard. Silver Creek is small. News travels." Tom reached out, stopped just short of touching her shoulder. "If your family is out there, I'll find out." She nodded, hope and fear warring in her eyes. "Be careful." "Always am." That night they ate together at the small table inside the cabin. Tom had made stew from the rabbit thickened with flour, seasoned with sage he grew near the creek. Simple food, but warm and filling. They ate in silence, but it was the silence of companionship now, not strangers. After dinner, Naichi took out the misshapen piece of steel she'd forged that morning, held it in the lamplight, turning it over. "It's not beautiful," she said. "Doesn't have to be beautiful to be important." Tom was sharpening his knife by the fire. "First thing I ever forged was a nail, crooked as a snake. My father told me to keep it. He said 20 years from now, when you're a master, you'll look at that nail and remember you had to start somewhere. Do you still have it?" Tom reached into his shirt pocket, pulled out a small cloth bundle, unwrapped it. Inside was a bent, blackened nail. "Always." Naichi smiled, really smiled. "Then I'll keep mine too." She tucked the steel back into her pocket. Outside, night sounds began. Crickets, an owl calling. Somewhere far off, a coyote. The sounds of a world that kept turning despite human tragedy. "Tom." "Yes." "When you go to town tomorrow, if you hear nothing about my family, I won't be angry with you." "I know. But if you hear something, anything, even if it's bad, tell me the truth." "I will." She stood, moved toward the bed, then paused. "You said earlier that the dead live through what we do." "Yes." "Then tomorrow when I practice at the forge, I'll be practicing for Ash Key. He wanted to learn. I'll learn for him." Tom felt his chest tighten. "He'd be proud of you." "I hope so." She lay down, pulled the blanket up. Tom banked the fire, took his own blanket, went to his usual place on the forge floor, but before he left, Naichi spoke one more time. "Tom, thank you. For everything." "Sleep well, Naichi." He closed the door quietly, lay down on the familiar hard stone, looked up at the rafters where moonlight made patterns through the roof gaps. Tomorrow he'd ride to Silver Creek. Tomorrow he'd face the possibility of running into Crow's men. Tomorrow everything might change. But tonight he'd done something he hadn't done in 3 years. He'd told his story to another person, and instead of judgment he'd found understanding. Instead of condemnation, compassion. Maybe Tom thought as sleep began to claim him. Maybe this was what healing felt like. Not forgetting, not even forgiving yourself, but finding someone who could carry part of the weight with you. Someone who understood that survival wasn't victory, just the chance to try again tomorrow. In the cabin, Naichi lay awake too. In her pocket she could feel the piece of steel she'd forged. Rough, imperfect, but real. She'd made it. With her own hands, her own strength, she'd changed shapeless metal into something with form. Tomorrow Tom would go to town. Tomorrow she'd find out if any of her people had survived. Tomorrow might bring hope, or might bring final confirmation that she truly was alone. But tonight she'd learned to shape steel, Tonight she'd shared her story with someone who didn't pity her or fear her, but simply heard her. Tonight, in this strange cabin with this strange white man who smelled of smoke and metal, she'd felt something she hadn't felt since the world burned. Safe. Not because she couldn't be hurt here, but because if hurt came, she wouldn't face it alone. That was worth something, maybe worth everything. The moon climbed higher. The forge coals dimmed to ash. And two people brought together by tragedy and chance slept under the same mountain sky, both wondering what dawn would bring, both hoping against all evidence that maybe the worst was behind them. They were wrong. The worst was still coming. But they'd face it together, forged in fire like the steel they worked. And sometimes that made all the difference. Tom saddled his mule before dawn. The animal, a sturdy gray mule named Barnaby, stood patient as always, ears flicking at the morning sounds. Tom had owned him for 4 years longer than he'd known any living creature since Sarah died. The mule knew the trail to Silver Creek by heart, could probably make the journey blind. Nietzsche emerged from the cabin as Tom was checking the saddle straps. She'd been awake, he could tell. Probably hadn't slept much. Her hair was freshly braided, her clothing neat. In the pre-dawn darkness, she looked like a shadow barely there. "You're sure about this?" she asked. "I'm sure." Tom tied a small bundle of finished tools to the saddle. 3 knives, a set of hinges, various small items traders would buy. "Stay inside mostly. Keep the fire low. If anyone comes up here, which they won't, hide in the root cellar behind the cabin. There's a false floor." "I know how to hide, Tom." He looked at her. "I know you do. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just come back." Tom swung up onto Barnaby the mule, grunting slightly under his weight. From up here he could see Nietzsche's face more clearly in the growing light. Beautiful, he realized suddenly. Even with the worry lines, the still healing cuts, the shadows under her eyes. Beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with comfort and everything to do with strength. "I'll be back before dark," he said. "I promise." She nodded, stepped back. Tom nudged Barnaby forward. The mule picked its way down the rocky trail with sure-footed confidence. Tom didn't look back. If he looked back, he might not go. And he needed to go. Needed information. Needed to know what Crow was planning. Needed to know if Nietzsche's family had survived. The ride to Silver Creek took 3 hours at a steady pace. Tom knew every rock, every turn, every place where the trail narrowed to nothing, and you had to trust your animal not to slip. He'd made this journey once a month for 3 years, always the same route, always the same careful isolation. But today felt different. Today he wasn't just a hermit coming down from his mountain to trade. Today he was protecting something. Someone. The weight of it sat different in his chest. The sun was well up by the time Silver Creek came into view. Calling it a town was generous. Maybe 300 people on a good day. One main street, dirt running east to west. Buildings on both sides. Sam Hutchins' general store. Maria Rodriguez's boarding house and cantina. Marshall Stone's office with a jail cell behind it. A blacksmith shop, though the smith had died last year and no one had replaced him. A church small and white that got used twice a month when the circuit preacher came through. Saloon at the far end, naturally. Tom rode in slowly, eyes scanning for horses, specifically military horses. He saw none. Good sign. He guided Barnaby to the hitching post outside Sam's store, dismounted, tied the reins loosely. The mule immediately found a patch of grass to crop. The bell over Sam's door jangled as Tom entered. The store smelled like it always did. Coffee, tobacco, soap, leather, and the sweet, dusty smell of dry goods. Sam Hutchins stood behind the counter, sorting through a shipment of canned goods. He looked up and his weathered face split into a genuine smile. "Big Tom, 3 weeks this time. Thought maybe you'd fallen off your mountain." Tom managed a small smile back. "Still standing, Sam. Brought some pieces." He untied the bundle from his belt, laid it on the counter. Sam examined each item with the careful eye of a man who'd been trading for 40 years. He picked up one of the knives, tested the edge with his thumb, checked the balance. "Good work as always. I can give you $20 in trade or $15 in coin." "Trade's fine. I need flour, salt, coffee beans." Tom paused. "And maybe some cloth. Something sturdy." Sam raised an eyebrow. "Cloth, you taking up sewing now?" "Just need it." "Uh-huh." Sam started gathering items, but his eyes were curious. Tom had never bought cloth before, only bought exactly what one man needed to survive alone. This was different. This was noticing. While Sam worked, Tom said casually, "Heard there was some trouble with Apache last week." Sam's hands paused. He looked at Tom carefully. "Where'd you hear that?" "I didn't. I'm asking." Sam set down the bag of flour he'd been holding. Came closer, voice dropping. "Tom, why are you asking about Apache trouble?" "Just curious. I heard gunfire echoing through the canyons. Wondered what happened." It was a lie. Tom had heard nothing but Nietzsche's story, but Sam didn't know that. The old man studied him for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. "There was an incident. Military calls it a skirmish with hostiles. Maria calls it something else." "What does Maria call it?" "A massacre." Sam glanced toward the door, making sure no one was listening. "She's got cousins who trade with Apache. They say Crow's men hit a small village. Women, children mostly. The men were out hunting." Tom's hands gripped the counter edge so hard his knuckles went white. "Everyone died. That's what Crow reported. 9 bodies." Sam's voice went even quieter. But Maria heard different. She heard the village had 10 people, and that soldiers are looking for a survivor. A woman. Tom forced his breathing to stay normal. "They say where this woman might have gone. No one knows, but Crow's got patrols out. They're checking every ranch, every settlement within 50 miles. They say she's a dangerous hostile, needs to be brought in for questioning. But Maria says if they find her, she won't survive the questioning." Tom absorbed this, forced himself to ask the next question casually. "Anyone else survive? Any of the men who were hunting?" Sam's expression changed. Something like hope flickered there. "Funny you should ask. I heard something yesterday. Mexican trader came through heading south. He told Maria he'd seen a small group of Apache, maybe 5 or 6 people, heading west toward New Mexico. Said they looked like they'd been through hell. One of them was limping bad." "Did he say where exactly?" "Somewhere near the Gila wilderness. Moving at night, hiding during day. Smart if they want to stay ahead of Crow." Sam started bagging goods again. "Why all the interest, Tom?" "No reason. Just don't like hearing about massacres." "No one with a conscience does." Sam tied off a sack of beans. "But conscience and survival aren't always compatible out here. You be careful asking questions. Crow's got eyes everywhere." "I'm always careful." Sam handed over the bundled goods. "Tom, if you know something, if you've seen something, you need to be more than careful. Crow isn't just mean. He's smart. And he's got the backing of men who want all Apache gone no matter how it gets done." "I don't know anything, Sam. Just a blacksmith who lives on a mountain." "Right." Sam didn't believe him, Tom could tell, but the old man had enough wisdom not to push. "You need anything else?" "Information. Has Crow himself been here?" 2 days ago. Him and that bastard Dutch. They went to every business, asked if anyone had seen a lone Apache woman. Most people said no because most people haven't. But they're watching. Someone reports something, Crow'll know within hours." Tom nodded slowly, mind working. 2 days ago. That meant Crow had been here the same day Tom found Nietzsche. The captain was moving fast, systematic. That was dangerous. "Thanks, Sam." Tom gathered his supplies. "I'll be back in a few weeks." "Tom," Sam called as he reached the door. "That cloth you bought, you planning to make clothes for someone?" Tom paused, hand on the doorframe. "Just need it for rags, cleaning." "Course you do." Sam's voice was gentle. "You take care of yourself up there, and if you've got company, you take care of them too." Tom met his eyes. Sam knew, or suspected enough that the difference didn't matter, but there was no judgment there, just concern. "I will," Tom said. "Thank you." He stepped out into the bright midday sun. loaded the supplies onto Barnaby, working quickly but not rushing. Rushing drew attention. He was just Big Tom the hermit blacksmith doing his monthly trade run. Nothing unusual. Except everything was unusual now. He was about to mount up when he heard bootsteps behind him. Heavy military. Tom turned slowly. Lieutenant James Hayes stood 3 feet away, hand resting on his pistol belt, but his face wasn't hostile. It was conflicted, worried. "Brennan," Hayes said quietly. Hayes. They'd served together for 6 months before Tom deserted. Hayes had been one of the 10 who didn't fire at the village, one of the ones with a conscience. "You shouldn't be here," Hayes said. His eyes flicked around, checking who might be watching. "Crow's got your description circulated. If he finds out you're still in the territory..." "I've been here 3 years. Why's it matter now?" Hayes stepped closer, voice dropping to barely a whisper. "Because he's looking for an Apache woman, and he knows someone might help her. He's checking everyone who lives remote, everyone who might have reason to hate the Army. Your name is on that list." Tom's stomach dropped. "When's he planning to check on me?" "Soon. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. But it's coming." Hayes glanced around again. "Tom, if you know where she is, you need to get her far away from here. Crow won't take her prisoner. He'll kill her, and anyone protecting her." "Why are you telling me this?" Hayes's jaw tightened. "Because I remember that village, and I remember you tried to stop it. That means something." He paused. "And because I can't stand by and watch it happen again. I've already stood by too many times." Tom studied the younger man's face, saw genuine anguish there. "What's Crow's plan exactly?" "He's dividing the territory into sectors, checking each one systematically. Ranches, cabins, caves, anywhere someone could hide. He's using the excuse of looking for hostile Apache to justify searching everywhere. Your place is in Sector 7. He'll reach it within the week." "How many men will he bring?" "At least 6. Maybe more if he thinks there's real resistance." Hayes looked Tom straight in the eye. "Don't resist Tom. Don't be there when he comes. Take whoever you're protecting and run. There's no winning a fight against him." "Where would we run?" "Mexico. Get across the border. It's only 40 miles west. Cross the Rio de las Palomas. Once you're in Mexican territory, Crow can't touch you officially." Hayes straightened and spoke louder now for anyone who might be watching. "So that'll be $5 for the horseshoes when they're ready." Playing a role, Tom understood. "I'll have them done by next week." "Good." Hayes turned to go, then stopped. "Brennan, the woman you're protecting, if she exists, she must be pretty important for you to risk this." "I'm not protecting anyone." "Right." Hayes almost smiled. "But if you were, I'd tell you this. There's a canyon about 10 miles west of your place, called Devil's Backbone. Runs almost to the river. It's narrow, hard to track through. If someone wanted to reach Mexico unseen, that would be the route." "Why tell me this?" "Because some orders shouldn't be followed. I figured that out too late last time. Not this time." Hayes touched his hat. "Good day, Mr. Brennan." He walked away. Tom watched him go, mind racing. Devil's Backbone, 10 miles west. Hayes had just given him an escape route, but also a timeline. Less than a week before Crow came knocking. Tom mounted Barnaby, turned the mule toward home. But before leaving town, he made one more stop. Maria Rodriguez's boarding house. Maria was in her kitchen, kneading bread dough with strong hands. She looked up when Tom entered through the back door, and her expression shifted from surprise to something like understanding. "Mr. Brennan, you don't usually come to the back door." "Mrs. Rodriguez, I need to ask you something." She wiped flour from her hands, studied him. Maria was 45, had buried a husband who'd been killed by white men who didn't like Mexicans settling here. She had no love for violence and no fear of truth. "Ask," she said. "The Apache survivors heading toward Gila. Did your cousin say anything else about them? How many exactly, what they looked like?" Maria's eyes narrowed. "Why do you want to know?" Tom made a decision. Took a risk. Because I might know someone looking for family. Maria stared at him for a long moment. Then she came closer, voice dropping. My cousin said 6 people. 4 adults, 2 children. One of the adults was an older man limping badly. Gray hair, many scars. The children were young, maybe 5 and 7. The other adults were warriors carrying wounded. Did he see a young boy 8 years old? Maria's face fell. No. No young boys. Tom's heart sank. Ashki hadn't made it. But others had. Naichi's family, or at least some of them. If someone wanted to find this group, Tom said carefully, how would they do it? They wouldn't. The Gila is huge. Thousands of square miles of wilderness. You'd have to know where to look. Maria paused. Unless you knew the Apache way. They'd head for high ground with water, caves for shelter. There are only so many places like that in the Gila. You know these places? Some. My husband used to trade with Apache. He showed me maps. She looked at Tom hard. If I draw you one of these maps, what will you do with it? I'll use it to help someone find their family. And if soldiers follow you? They won't. We'll go at night. Move careful. Maria studied him. You're a good man, Tom Brennan. Foolish, but good. She went to a drawer, pulled out paper and pencil. Drew quickly, confidently. There. 3 possible locations where Apache would shelter in the western Gila. Each one marked. The closest is 2 days' ride. She handed him the paper. Tom folded it carefully, tucked it inside his shirt. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't get killed. And tell the woman you're protecting that Maria Rodriguez says she's brave, and that she's not alone. Tom nodded, throat tight, turned to go. And Tom, Maria called, when Crow comes asking, and he will, I'll tell him I haven't seen you in 2 months. I'm good at forgetting things. Thank you, Maria. He left through the back door, mounted Barnaby, and started the long ride home. His mind churned with everything he'd learned. Naichi's family was alive, some of them. Not Ashki, but others. Adults, children, survivors. But Crow was coming, within a week, maybe sooner. Which meant Tom and Naichi had days at most to decide. Stay and fight, which was suicide. Run and leave everything behind, which was survival. Or do the harder thing. Try to reunite Naichi with her people, then get everyone across the border to safety. The last option was the most dangerous, also the most right. Tom pushed Barnaby faster than usual. The mule protested but obeyed. The sun was past its peak, starting its long slide toward the western mountains. Tom wanted to be home before dark. Wanted to see Naichi, make sure she was safe. Wanted to tell her the news. Good and bad mixed together like they always were. He reached the final climb to his cabin as the sun touched the horizon. Pushed Barnaby up the steep trail. The mule was lathered, breathing hard. Tom would rub him down good, give him extra oats as apology for the hard ride. But first he needed to see Naichi, needed to know she was all right. The cabin came into view. Smoke rose from the chimney. Good. She'd kept the fire going. Tom dismounted, tied Barnaby, grabbed the supply bundles, started toward the cabin door. It opened before he reached it. Naichi stood there, and the look on her face stopped him cold. Not fear exactly, but close, urgent. What's wrong? Tom asked. Someone was here. Tom's blood went cold. When? An hour ago, maybe less. I was in the root cellar, like you said. Heard horse hooves, men talking. How many? 2. They rode around the cabin, looked in the windows. One of them tried the door. Tom's jaw clenched. Then what? Then they left. Rode back down the mountain. Naichi stepped closer. But Tom, before they left, one of them said something. He said, he'll come back eventually, and when he does, we'll be waiting. Tom closed his eyes. It had started. Crow's net was tightening faster than Hayes had predicted. We have to go, Tom said. Tonight. Go where? I'll explain everything. But first pack. Light as possible. Food, water, weapons, warm clothes, Nothing else. We leave in 2 hours as soon as the moon rises." "Tom, what did you learn in town?" He looked at her, saw hope and fear fighting in her face. "I learned your family is alive, some of them. And I learned that if we don't leave tonight, we'll never get the chance to find them." Naichi's eyes widened. "My family? Who? How many?" "6 people. Adults and children. They're heading west. I've got a map." Tom took her shoulders gently. "But we have to move fast. Crow is coming, and he won't stop until he finds you." She nodded, fear giving way to determination. "Then we go. We find them, and we all go to Mexico together." "It won't be easy. It's 2 days hard riding to where they might be. Then we have to convince them to come with us. Then another day to the border, all while Crow's men are hunting us. Nothing worth doing is easy." Naichi turned toward the cabin. "I'll pack." Tom caught her arm. "Naichi, your brother Ashki. I asked about him. I'm sorry. He wasn't with the survivors." Her face crumpled for just a moment. Then she straightened, pushed the grief down where it couldn't slow her. "I know. I felt it. I just needed to hear it confirmed." She looked at Tom. "But others lived. That means something." "It means everything." They worked quickly. Tom saddled Barnaby and took down his other mule, Greta, from the upper pasture. 2 mules could carry more, and they'd need supplies for possibly 8 people by the time they found Naichi's family. Naichi moved through the cabin with efficiency, packing food, blankets, the first aid supplies. She also packed the misshapen piece of steel she'd forged 2 days ago. Tom noticed but said nothing. Some things mattered beyond their utility. As the moon rose full and bright, they stood outside the cabin one last time. Tom looked at the forge where he'd worked for 3 years, the anvil, the tools, the life he'd built from isolation and guilt. "You coming back?" Naichi asked. "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not." Tom turned to her. "Right now, getting you to safety is all that matters. Everything else is just iron and wood." They mounted up, Tom on Barnaby, Naichi on Greta. The mules were loaded but not overburdened. They'd move fast when needed. Tom took one last look at the cabin silhouetted against the moonlit sky. Then he turned west, toward the Gila wilderness, toward danger and hope mixed together, toward Naichi's family, toward Mexico, toward a future he couldn't see, but was choosing to believe in anyway. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," Naichi said. They rode into the darkness, leaving behind the only safety they'd known. 2 people who'd found each other in ashes, now choosing to walk into fire together. Not because they had to, but because some things, some people were worth burning for. Behind them the cabin stood empty. The forge went cold. And in the morning when Crow's men arrived, they'd find nothing but an abandoned shell and tracks leading west. The hunt had begun. But so had something else, something stronger than fear, something that might, if they were lucky and brave and very careful, carry them all the way to freedom. Or it might get them all killed. They'd find out soon enough. The moon was a silver coin in the black sky, bright enough to cast shadows. Tom and Naichi rode west through terrain that grew rougher with every mile. Red Rock Canyon gave way to broken country, all sharp stones and twisted juniper arroyos that could swallow a horse and rider if you weren't careful. They moved in silence, the only sounds the soft footfalls of the mules and the creak of leather. Tom led, following a route he'd scouted years ago but never used. Behind him, Naichi sat straight in the saddle, eyes scanning constantly. She rode like she'd been born on horseback, which maybe she had been. Apache children learned to ride before they could walk properly, or so he'd heard. 3 hours from the cabin, Tom called a halt in a narrow canyon with high walls on both sides. Good cover, hard to approach without being heard. He helped Naichi down, though she didn't need help, then tended to the mules, checking their hooves, giving them water from his hat. Naichi stood at the canyon mouth, looking back the way they'd come, listening. Tom joined her. "Hear anything?" he asked quietly. "No, but that doesn't mean they aren't coming. We've got maybe 6 hours before dawn. We'll rest the mules for 1 hour, then push on. There's a place I know about 10 miles ahead. Watergrass, good sight lines. We can hole up there during the day, move again tomorrow night. Naichi nodded. She looked tired but not exhausted. Holding up better than he'd expected, though he shouldn't have been surprised. This woman had survived fire and loss. A night ride was nothing. "Tom," she said after a moment, "tell me about my family. You said 6 people. Who did the traitor see?" Tom pulled out the paper Maria had given him, unfolded it in the moonlight. Older man with gray hair and many scars, limping badly. 2 children, young ones. 3 other adults, warriors. That's what Maria's cousin reported. Naichi's breath caught. The old man. That's Takota, my father's brother. The children could be Kaya's younger siblings. She had a brother and sister. Her voice broke slightly. I thought they'd all died. They didn't. They survived. Tom refolded the map. And we're going to find them. How do you know where they went? I don't know for certain, but Maria gave me 3 locations where Apache would shelter in the Gila. Places with water-high ground caves. We check each one until we find them. And if soldiers find us first, Tom met her eyes, then we fight, or we run, or we do whatever we have to do to survive, together. She studied his face in the moonlight. You're risking everything for people you don't know. People who might hate you for being white. Why? Tom took a moment before answering. 3 years ago I stood by while people died because I was afraid. Afraid of my commanding officer. Afraid of consequences. Afraid of doing what was right. He looked out at the dark landscape. I'm done being afraid. Your family deserves to live. You deserve to be with them. If I can help make that happen, then maybe I'm worth something after all. Naichi reached out, touched his arm briefly. You're already worth something. You saved my life. That means everything. They rested another hour, taking turns keeping watch. Then they moved again deeper into the wilderness. The terrain grew more vertical. They climbed switchbacks that made the mules grunt with effort. Tom's thighs burned from gripping the saddle. But they climbed. Dawn found them high in the mountains, looking down on a valley that stretched west as far as the eye could see. Gila country. Vast, empty, beautiful, and deadly. Somewhere down there, Naichi's family was hiding. And somewhere behind them, Crow's men were hunting. Tom led them to the place he'd mentioned, a bowl-shaped depression surrounded by rocks with a spring at the center. Grass grew thick around the water. The mules could graze and drink while Tom and Naichi rested. They made no fire. Too risky. Ate dried meat and hardtack, drank cold spring water. Then Tom stood first watch while Naichi slept under a blanket using her saddle as a pillow. She fell asleep instantly, the exhaustion finally catching up. Tom sat on a high rock rifle across his knees. He'd taken it from the cabin at the last minute, breaking his 3-year vow never to touch a gun. But vows meant nothing if Naichi died because he was too stubborn to protect her. Sometimes principles had to bend, like iron in the forge. Heated enough, and even the strongest metal yields. The sun climbed. The day grew hot. Tom's eyes burned from lack of sleep, but he didn't close them. Couldn't. Every shadow might be a soldier. Every bird taking flight might signal someone approaching. He watched and waited and thought about what came next. If they found Naichi's family, that was step 1. Step 2 was convincing them to come. Not all Apache trusted white men, and with good reason. They might refuse, might even try to kill him. Tom had to be ready for that. Step 3 was getting everyone to Mexico. 8 people, including children, moving through country that Crow's patrols were combing. It would take coordination, speed, and luck. Maybe more luck than they had any right to expect. But Tom had learned something in 3 years of isolation. You didn't need a lot of luck. You just needed to not give up. Keep moving. Keep trying. Keep believing that the next step forward was possible, even when it seemed impossible. Around noon, Naichi woke. She sat up, looked around with the instant alertness of someone who'd learned to wake ready for danger, saw Tom still on watch, came to join him. "You should have woken me," she said. "You needed sleep." "So do you." "I'll sleep tonight. Maybe." Tom handed her a canteen. "How do you feel?" "Sore, tired. But all right." She drank, wiped her mouth. "How far to the first location?" Tom pulled out Maria's map. "About 15 miles. If we leave at sunset, we can be there by midnight. It's a canyon with a cave system. Maria's husband said Apache used it as a winter camp sometimes. And if they're not there, then we try location 2. And 3. We keep trying until we find them." Tom folded the map. "Naichi, I need to ask you something. When we find them, your Uncle Dakota, will he listen to you?" "About what?" "About coming with us to Mexico. About trusting me enough to follow." Naichi considered this. "Dakota is wise but suspicious. He's seen too many white men break too many promises. He won't trust you just because I say so." "Then how do I earn his trust?" "You don't, not quickly. But maybe—" She trailed off thinking. "In Apache way, actions speak louder than words. If you show you're willing to risk yourself for us for people you don't know, that means something. Especially if you have no reason to do it except it being right. I'm already risking myself. Then you're already earning trust. You just don't know it yet." Tom hoped she was right. But hope wasn't a plan. They needed more than hope. The afternoon crawled by. Tom finally let Naiche take watch while he slept. Though sleep was restless, full of dreams about soldiers and gunfire, and Sarah's face the last time he'd seen her alive. He woke, gasping, sweat-soaked, despite the cool mountain air. Naiche was there instantly. Bad dreams. Always. Tom sat up, rubbed his face. "What time is it?" "Maybe an hour before sunset. We should get ready." They prepared in silence, checked the mules' redistributed weight in the packs, made sure weapons were accessible. Tom carried the rifle and his large knife. Naiche had taken a hatchet from the cabin and wore it on her belt. Not much, but better than nothing. As the sun dropped toward the western horizon, painting everything gold and orange, they mounted up. Tom took one last look around their camp. No signs of pursuit, no dust clouds in the distance. Maybe they'd gotten away clean, or maybe Crow was just being patient, waiting for the right moment to spring his trap. They rode as the light failed, moving from gold to purple to deep blue to black. The moon rose later tonight, so the darkness was almost complete for the first hour. The mules picked their way carefully, trusting instinct more than sight. Tom let Barnaby choose the path, knowing the animal's senses were better than his in this darkness. Around 10 o'clock, the moon finally cleared the eastern peaks. The world transformed from black to silver. Tom could see again, and what he saw made his chest tighten. They were entering a canyon. Sheer walls rose on both sides, maybe 200 feet high. The trail narrowed to barely 10 feet across. Ahead, the canyon twisted out of sight. This was Maria's first location. Devil's Throat, she'd called it. If Naiche's family was anywhere nearby, they'd be in the caves that honeycombed these walls. Tom dismounted, helped Naiche down. "We walk from here. 2 exposed on the mules. If someone's watching, we're targets." They tied the animals to a stunted tree, took only what they could carry. Tom led the way into the canyon, rifle ready. Every shadow could hide a person. Every rock could conceal an ambush. His heart hammered, but his hands stayed steady. They'd gone maybe 100 yards when Naiche grabbed his arm. "Stop!" Tom froze. "What?" "We're being watched. I can feel it." Tom scanned the canyon walls. Saw nothing. "You sure?" "Yes. Apache don't guard the entrance to their camps. They guard the approach. Someone's watching us right now, maybe more than one." Tom slowly raised his hands, showing he held no weapon ready. "What do I do?" "Call out, in Apache. Tell them we mean no harm." "I don't speak enough Apache for that." "Then I'll do it." Naiche stepped forward, hands also raised. She called out in her language voice, echoing off the stone walls. Tom didn't understand the words, but he caught the tone. Peaceful, respectful, asking for permission. Silence answered, long enough that Tom started to think maybe Naiche was wrong. Maybe no one was there. Then a voice called back, "Old male speaking Apache." Nietzsche responded. The conversation went back and forth 3 times. Finally, Nietzsche lowered her hands. "They're here," she said, voice shaking with emotion. "My family. Dakota says we can approach. But Tom, you have to stay behind me. If you come forward as a white man with a gun, they'll shoot you." "I understand." Tom slung the rifle over his shoulder, showing he wasn't ready to use it. "Lead the way." They walked deeper into the canyon. Around a bend, firelight flickered from a cave entrance about 20 feet up the wall. A rope ladder hung down. Nietzsche climbed first. Tom followed, feeling exposed and vulnerable, knowing that right now invisible eyes were watching him, weapons probably aimed at his back. He reached the cave mouth, pulled himself up. What he saw made him stop. 6 people sat around a small fire. An old man with gray hair and a face like weathered leather, one leg wrapped in blood-stained bandages. 2 children, a boy, maybe 7, and a girl, maybe 5, huddled together for warmth. 3 adults, 2 men and a woman, all younger, all carrying the hard look of people who'd seen too much death. And all of them were staring at Tom with expressions ranging from suspicion to outright hatred. Nietzsche spoke rapidly in Apache, gesturing to Tom, explaining. The old man, Dakota, responded. His voice was cold. The 2 younger men stood, hands moving to weapons. Knives, a hatchet, a bow with arrows. This was going wrong fast. Tom slowly raised his hands. "I'm not your enemy," he said, even though he knew they might not understand English. "I'm here to help." One of the younger men spat something that needed no translation. The hatred in his eyes was clear. This man wanted Tom dead. His hand moved to his knife. Nietzsche stepped between them, speaking sharply. An argument erupted, voices rising. The children started crying. Tom stood very still, knowing that one wrong move would end with a knife in his ribs. Finally, Dakota raised his hand. Silence fell immediately. The old man spoke, voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. Everyone listened. When he finished, he looked at Tom and switched to heavily accented English. "My niece says you saved her, says you are good white man. This is hard to believe." Dakota's eyes were sharp, assessing. "But I am old. I have seen much. I know not all white men are evil. Some are just ignorant. A few are good." He paused. "Which are you?" Tom met his gaze. "I don't know if I'm good, but I know what's right. And leaving Nietzsche to die in the ashes wasn't right. Helping her find her family is right. Getting all of you to safety in Mexico is right. That's all I know." "You were a soldier." "I was. I'm not anymore." "Why did you leave the army?" Tom took a breath. This was the moment. Truth or lies? He chose truth. "Because my commanding officer ordered me to shoot women and children. I refused. He killed my wife in revenge. So I ran. I've been hiding for 3 years, until I found Nietzsche." Dakota translated for those who didn't understand English. Tom watched their faces shift. Not to trust, not yet, but to something less than hatred, maybe to consideration. "This commanding officer," Dakota said. "His name, Captain Henry Crow." The 2 children whimpered. The younger woman made a sound like a wounded animal. One of the men said something sharp in Apache. Dakota nodded slowly. "Crow. Yes, we know him. He led the raid on our village. He is the one who shot my nephew in the belly and left him to die slowly." The old man's voice was steady, but his eyes burned. "He is the one we would kill if given the chance." "He's hunting all of you," Tom said. "He knows some escaped. He's got patrols combing this entire region. You're not safe here." "We know. We move every 2 days. Stay ahead of him." Dakota grimaced, shifted his wounded leg. "But I am slowing them down. Soon they will catch us, unless—" He studied Tom carefully. "Unless we had help. Someone who knows white man's ways, who can scout ahead, warn us of patrols." Tom's pulse quickened. "I can do that. And more. I know a route to Mexico. Canyon called Devil's Backbone. Hard to track through. We can reach the border in 3 days if we move fast." 3 days. One of the younger men spoke English. "We have children, wounded elder. We cannot move fast." "Then we move smart. Travel at night. Rest during day in places I know. I've been living in these mountains for 3 years. I know every hiding spot, every water source, every route that avoids main trails." The young man looked skeptical. "Why should we trust you? You could be leading us into trap." "I could be, but I'm not." Tom looked at each of them in turn. "Here's what I know. Crow wants you dead, because you're witnesses to what he did. He wants me dead because I'm a deserter who knows what kind of man he is. We're all his enemies, which means we're natural allies." Nietzsche spoke up, voice passionate. Tom didn't understand the words, but he heard the conviction. She was vouching for him, risking her own credibility with her family to defend him. Dakota listened, then spoke to the group. Discussion followed, voices overlapping, some angry, some uncertain. The children watched with wide eyes. Tom stood silent, letting them decide. This wasn't his choice to make. Finally, Dakota raised his hand again. Silence. He looked at Tom. "We will come with you, not because we trust you, but because Nietzsche trusts you, and we trust Nietzsche, and because staying here means slow death. Moving means maybe we live." He paused. "But understand this, white man. If you betray us, if this is a trick, I will kill you myself. With these old hands, I will kill you. Do you understand?" "I understand, and I give you my word. I won't betray you." Words are wind. Actions matter. Dakota gestured to the younger men. "Neol and Kuruk will watch you, always. If you make one wrong move, they end you." "Agreed." Tom nodded. "Agreed. Then we leave before dawn. We have maybe 3 hours. Rest now. We will need strength for what comes." The group settled in for the brief rest. The younger woman, whose name Tom learned was Ayanna, tended to Dakota's leg wound. It was infected, Tom could smell it. The old man needed proper medical care, antibiotic surgery maybe, but there was none of that here, just herbs and hope. Nietzsche sat beside Tom near the cave entrance where they could watch the canyon below. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For coming with me, for not running when you had the chance." "Running alone isn't living. I figured that out." Tom glanced at her. "Your uncle is tough. Reminds me of my grandfather. He's the strongest man I know, but he's hurt badly. I don't know if he can make the journey." "Then we'll carry him if we have to. We don't leave anyone behind." Nietzsche smiled slightly. "You really mean that?" "I really do." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. In a few hours they'd move. 8 people instead of 2. Slower, more vulnerable, but also stronger in numbers. And maybe, just maybe, they'd all make it to Mexico alive. Tom didn't pray much anymore, hadn't since Sarah died. But tonight he sent up a wordless hope to whatever might be listening. Let us make it. Let these people live. Let something good come from all this death. No answer came. But then answers rarely did. You just had to keep moving forward and hope your steps led somewhere worth reaching. Before dawn they prepared to leave. Dakota couldn't walk without help, so Neol and Kuruk fashioned a travois, 2 long poles with hide stretched between them that could be dragged behind a mule. Not comfortable, but functional. Tom gave up Greta for this purpose, knowing the old man needed it more than their supplies. The children, whose names were Casa and Elan, would ride together on Barnaby. They were small enough that the mule could handle both. The adults would walk. It would be slow going, but they'd manage. Tom led them down from the cave back to where they'd left the mules. His hands shook slightly as he rigged the travois. This was real now. 8 lives depending on him. 8 people who would die if he made a mistake. No pressure. They moved out as the first gray light touched the eastern sky. Tom took Point Nietzsche beside him. Behind them came Neol and Kuruk flanking the children on Barnaby. Ayanna walked beside Greta and the travois carrying Dakota. They moved slowly but steadily, heading west toward Devil's Backbone Canyon. The sun rose. The day grew hot. Tom called frequent stops, making sure everyone drank water, ate a little, rested in shade when possible. Dakota's face was gray with pain, but he never complained. The old man had more toughness in his wounded body than most men had healthy. Around noon, Tom climbed a high rock to scout ahead. What he saw made his blood turn to ice water. Dust cloud, east, maybe 3 miles away, moving west. Toward them. Riders, at least 6, maybe more. Crow's patrol. And they were coming fast. Tom scrambled down, ran to the group. "We've got company. Soldiers east side 3 miles out. We need to move, now." Dakota heard him, spoke sharply in Apache. Everyone moved faster, fear giving them speed. But speed wasn't enough. They were still too slow. Burdened with wounded and children, they couldn't outrun mounted soldiers. Tom's mind raced. They needed an advantage, something to slow the pursuit or hide their trail. He looked around desperately. Rocks, scrub brush, dry creek bed. The creek bed. That was it. "This way." Tom led them into the rocky channel. "Walk in the stones. Don't leave tracks. Move." They scrambled into the creek bed, following it west. The stones were rough underfoot, hard to walk on, but they left fewer tracks than dirt. Tom pushed them hard, harder than was safe with children and a wounded elder. Behind them, the dust cloud grew closer. Tom could hear shouting now. The soldiers had found their trail, were following, getting closer every minute. Devil's Backbone Canyon was still 2 miles away. They'd never make it. Not like this. Tom made a decision. "Naichi, take them ahead. Follow the creek bed west for half a mile, then cut north into that cluster of rocks. Hide there. Don't move until I come back." "What are you doing?" "Buying time. Leading them away." Tom grabbed his rifle. "I'll circle back east, make noise, leave obvious tracks going south, draw them off your trail." "That's suicide." "Maybe, but it's the only chance." Tom looked at her, really looked, maybe for the last time. "If I don't come back, get them to Mexico. Promise me." "Tom, no. We can find another way." "There is no other way." He touched her face briefly. "I promise I'll try to make it back. But if I don't, you keep going. You save your family. That's what matters." Naichi's eyes filled with tears. "You matter too." "Then I'll come back." Tom managed to smile. "I'm good at surviving. 3 years in these mountains taught me that." He turned before she could argue more. Ran east, back the way they'd come. Ran toward the soldiers, toward danger, toward what might be his death. But if it bought Naichi and her family time to escape, then it was worth it. Some things were worth dying for. He'd known that once before. Fear made him forget. Now he remembered. He just hoped he'd live long enough to tell Naichi he'd figured it out. Tom ran east through the dry creek bed, boots crunching on stones loud enough to wake the dead. He wanted to be heard now. Wanted to draw attention like a lodestone draws iron. Behind him, Naichi and her family were disappearing into the rocks. Ahead, the dust cloud of Crow's patrol grew larger, closer. He could see individual riders now through the shimmering heat. 6 men, maybe 7, all armed, all trained soldiers. And here was Tom Brennan, one man with a rifle and a death wish, about to make himself the most interesting thing in this desert. He scrambled up out of the creek bed, deliberately kicking rocks, breaking branches, leaving a trail a blind man could follow. Headed due south toward a ridge line about half a mile away. If he could reach those rocks, he'd have high ground. Cover. A chance, however slim, of holding them off long enough for Naichi to get her family clear. Behind him, a shout went up. They'd spotted him. Good. Tom pushed harder, legs, burning lungs, screaming. 3 years of mountain living had kept him strong, but he wasn't young anymore. 42 felt ancient right now. Gunshots cracked the air. Bullets kicked up dirt 10 yards to his right. Too far to be accurate, just harassment fire. They wanted him alive for questioning. Wanted to know where the Apache were hiding. That gave Tom an advantage. They'd try not to kill him, at least not right away. He reached the rocks, threw himself behind a boulder big as a wagon, caught his breath. Brought the rifle up, checked the load. 15 rounds in the magazine. Not much, but enough if he was smart about it. The patrol came on fast. Tom counted them properly now. 7 riders fanning out in a standard search pattern. Professional. Dangerous. In the lead rode a man Tom recognized even at 200 yards. Sergeant Cole Dutch Crow's enforcer. The one with half his face burned away. The one who enjoyed hurting people. If Dutch was here, Crow himself might not be far behind. Tom's gut clenched. He'd hoped for regular soldiers. Men who might hesitate, might question orders. But Dutch never hesitated. Dutch was the kind of man who slept well after massacring villages. The riders closed to 100 yards. Dutch raised his hand and they stopped. Spread out in a line, smart, making themselves harder targets. Dutch himself dismounted, used his horse for cover, called out. "Thomas Brennan, we know it's you. Come out with your hands up. Captain Crow wants to talk." Tom didn't answer. Talking was the last thing on his agenda. "Be reasonable, Brennan. You're one man. We're 7. This ends one way, unless you surrender." Still Tom stayed silent. Let Dutch wonder. Let him worry. An enemy you couldn't see was scarier than one you could. Basic psychology. Tom had learned that in the Army. Dutch tried again. "We know you're protecting Apache. Tell us where they are and maybe the captain goes easy on you. Maybe he forgets you're a deserter." That made Tom laugh. Harsh, bitter sound. Crow forget. Crow forgave nothing. The man held grudges like other men held treasure. No, if Tom surrendered, he'd be dead by sunset. Probably hanged from the nearest tree, no trial, no mercy. Which meant he had nothing to lose by fighting. Tom rose slightly, sighted down the rifle, picked his target. Not Dutch tempting as that was. One of the horses on the far right. He squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked. The horse screamed, went down. The rider barely rolled clear in time. Chaos erupted. The soldiers scattered, seeking cover. Return fire came immediately, bullets spanging off rocks all around Tom. He ducked low, crawled 20 feet to a new position, came up firing again. Another horse down. Now they were 5 mounted, 2 on foot. Better odds. Still terrible, but better. Tom moved again before they could pin down his location. This boulder to that crevice. Crevice to a cluster of smaller rocks. Always moving. Never staying still. Making them waste ammunition trying to hit a target that wouldn't sit still. Minutes stretched like hours. Tom fired when he had clear shots, conserved ammunition when he didn't. Kept moving. Kept them focused on him and only him. In his mind he counted time. 5 minutes since the shooting started. Nietzsche would be a mile away by now. 10 minutes. Mile and a half. 15 minutes. 2 miles. Getting close to Devil's Backbone Canyon. Just needed to hold them a little longer. Then Dutch did something Tom didn't expect. The sergeant stood up completely exposed and started walking toward Tom's position. Just walking. Casual. Like he was out for a Sunday stroll. No cover. No fear. The other soldiers stopped firing, watching their sergeant with something like awe. Tom drew a bead on Dutch's chest. Easy shot. 100 yards. He'd made harder shots than this back when he gave a damn about being a good soldier. His finger tightened on the trigger. Dutch smiled. Like he knew. Like he wanted Tom to shoot him. "Go ahead, Brennan. Do it. But you should know we split up. 4 of my men are already tracking those Apache you're trying to protect. Right now they're closing in, so you can kill me or you can surrender and maybe, just maybe, we work out a deal." Tom's blood went cold. A bluff or truth. He couldn't tell. Dutch was a good liar, but he was also tactical. Splitting forces made sense if you suspected a diversion. If it was true, if 4 soldiers were hunting Nietzsche right now, then Tom was wasting time here. He needed to get back to her, needed to protect her family. But if he ran, Dutch and whoever remained would gun him down before he made 50 yards. Stalemate. Tom lowered the rifle slightly. "What kind of deal?" Dutch's smile widened. "Smart man. Here's the deal. You tell us where they're going, give us their route, and the captain lets you live. Puts you on a supply wagon heading east. You disappear, never come back, and we forget we ever saw you." It was a lie. Tom knew it in his bones. Crow would never let him live, would never let anyone live who knew what he'd done. But Tom played along, buying time, mind racing for options. "How do I know Crow will keep his word?" "You don't. But what choice do you have? Die here or take a chance?" Dutch spread his arms wide. "Come on out, Brennan. Let's talk like civilized men." Tom stood slowly, hands raised, rifle pointed at the sky, stepped out from behind the rocks, took 3 steps toward Dutch, then dove sideways as Dutch's hand went for his pistol. Tom was already moving when the shot rang out. The bullet passed through the space where he'd been standing. Tom hit the ground rolling, came up behind a different rock, brought his rifle to bear. But Dutch was already diving for cover, yelling orders. The remaining soldiers opened fire. The rock face around Tom exploded into shards. He pressed himself flat, trying to become part of the stone. They rushed him. Standard suppression tactic. Pin the target down with covering fire while others advance. Tom heard boots on rock getting closer. Couldn't move without exposing himself to crossfire. This was it, the end. He'd bought Nietzsche maybe 20 minutes. Hoped it was enough. Then something unexpected happened. Gunfire erupted from behind the soldiers. Different direction, different angle. Tom risked a glance, saw one soldier go down, then another. Saw muzzle flashes from rocks 300 yards north. Someone was helping him. Someone was shooting the soldiers. But who? The soldiers panicked, caught in a crossfire. Dutch screamed orders, trying to restore control. But 3 men were down now, and the others were breaking, looking for escape routes. One soldier mounted his horse, kicked it into a run, headed east. Then another, then a third. Running, leaving Dutch and one other man behind. Dutch looked around wildly, realized his situation. Outnumbered, outflanked. For once in his brutal life, he was the one facing death. Tom could see the calculation in his eyes. Stay and die or run and live. Dutch ran, grabbed his horse's reins, hauled himself into the saddle, and galloped east after his men. The last soldier followed. In seconds, the battlefield was empty except for Tom and the 3 bodies. Tom stayed down, rifle ready, breathing hard. Waited. After a full minute, a voice called out. Familiar. Speaking English with an Apache accent. "Brennan, hold your fire, I'm coming down." Neol emerged from the rocks to the north. Behind him came Kuruk. Both carried rifles Tom hadn't known they had. Both moved with the confidence of men who knew how to use them. Tom lowered his weapon, stood on shaking legs. "You came back." Neol reached him, face serious. "Nietzsche said you needed help. She was right. I told her to get everyone to safety. She did. Dakota and the children and Ayana are hidden in the canyon. We came back." Kuruk checked the fallen soldiers, making sure they were dead. "We couldn't let you die alone." Tom felt something break open in his chest. Gratitude, respect, brotherhood. "Thank you." "Don't thank us yet. We need to move. Those men will bring more." Neol gestured east. "Dutch is not the kind who forgets." "No, he's not." Tom gathered his rifle, checked his ammunition. 3 rounds left. Not good. He searched the dead soldiers, found 2 more rifles and several boxes of cartridges. Took them. Spoils of war. He'd feel guilty about looting the dead later. Right now, survival mattered more. They moved fast back toward Devil's Backbone Canyon. Tom's legs felt like water adrenaline crash, hitting hard. But he pushed through. Neol and Kuruk flanked him, alert for any pursuit. They moved in silence, 3 men who'd been enemies by birth, now acting as brothers in survival. An hour later, they reached the canyon entrance. Nietzsche was there watching, and when she saw Tom alive, her face transformed. Relief so powerful it was almost painful to witness. She ran to him, and he caught her, held her steady. "You came back," she said, voice breaking. "I promised I would." Promises don't always mean much. Mine do. Tom looked over her shoulder at the canyon. "Everyone all right?" "Yes, scared but all right. Dakota wants to talk to you." They found the old man propped against a rock, children sleeping nearby. Dakota studied Tom with those sharp eyes, seeing more than most men half his age. You drew them away, risked yourself for people you barely know. This is not something most white men do. I'm not most white men. No, you are not. Dakota nodded slowly. My nephews tell me you fought well, that you could have run but stayed to give us time. This means something. This means you are not just helping Naichi, you are helping all of us. I'm trying. Trying is enough. The old man shifted, grimaced at the pain in his leg. But now we have a problem. Dutch will return with more soldiers, maybe with Crow himself. We cannot move fast enough to escape, not with me like this, not with children. Then we need an advantage. Tom looked at the canyon walls. Devil's Backbone was narrow, twisting, full of choke points. This canyon is good defensible ground. If we have to make a stand, we could hold it, for a while. And then we hope help arrives. Or we go down fighting. But we don't give up. We don't surrender. Tom met Dakota's eyes. I've run from fights before. Cost me everything. I'm done running. Dakota smiled, showing gaps where teeth used to be. You sound like Apache warrior now. Maybe there is hope for you yet. Ayana came over with food, dried meat, and water. They ate in silence, gathering strength for what came next. The children woke confused and frightened. Ayana comforted them in Apache, singing a low song that seemed to calm them. Tom sat apart, checking weapons, thinking. 7 soldiers had attacked him. 3 were dead. 4 had run, including Dutch. But Dutch would be back, with reinforcements. Maybe a dozen men, maybe more. The odds were getting worse. Naichi joined him. What are you thinking? That I should have shot Dutch when I had the chance. You're not a murderer, Tom. That's one of the things I respect about you. Might have to become one before this is over. There's a difference between murder and defending yourself. Defending people you care about. She looked at him. You do care, don't you? About us. About me. Tom met her eyes. Yes, more than I probably should. Known you less than a week, and somehow you've become the most important thing in my world. Don't know how that happened. Maybe because we needed each other. Both of us. You needed a reason to stop hiding. I needed someone to prove not all white men are monsters. Naichi moved closer. We found each other in the ashes. Maybe that means something. Maybe it does. They sat together, shoulders touching, watching the sun drop toward the western mountains. In a few hours, darkness would come. And with darkness, likely would come Crow's revenge. But for now, they had this moment, this brief peace, this connection between 2 broken people who'd found a way to be less broken together. Dakota called them over after the sun set. The old man's face was grave. I have decided. We split up. You take the children and Ayana, move fast to Mexico, leave me and the others here. We hold them off. No. Naichi's voice was sharp. We don't leave anyone. Child, I am slowing you down. You know this. Better one old man dies than everyone. You're not dying, Uncle. None of us are. Naichi looked at Tom. Tell him. Tell him there's another way. Tom thought hard. Looked at the canyon, the rocks, the narrow passages. An idea formed. Dangerous. Maybe insane. But possible. There might be, if we're smart. And lucky. I'm listening, Dakota said. We don't fight them head on. We can't win that way. But we can make them think twice about following us into this canyon. Set traps, rock slides in key places. Make every foot they advance cost them. Slow them down enough that we can slip out the far end and reach the border. That takes time to set up. We don't have time. Then we work fast. Everyone who can move helps. We've got maybe 4 hours until they return. It's not much, but it might be enough. Tom stood. I need rope rocks and people willing to work all night. Can you give me that? Dakota translated for those who didn't speak English. Niol and Kuruk nodded immediately. Ayana looked frightened but determined. Even the children, Casa and Ilan, said they'd help however they could. "Then let's get to work," Tom said. "We've got a canyon to rig." They worked through the night. Tom showed them how to stack rocks at key points where the canyon narrowed positioned, so a single rope pull would send tons of stone crashing down. Niol and Kuruk were natural engineers, understanding the principles immediately. They improved on Tom's ideas, making the traps more efficient. Ayana gathered brush and deadwood, creating barriers that could be set on fire, filling the canyon with smoke to blind pursuers. The children carried smaller stones, building them into piles that could be kicked down on anyone passing below. Dakota, unable to do physical work, directed placement from his position, using his lifetime of warfare knowledge to position each trap for maximum effect. The old man might be wounded, but his mind was sharp as ever. By dawn, Devil's Backbone Canyon was a death trap. 5 major rock slide points, 3 fire barriers, dozens of minor obstacles. It wouldn't stop a determined force, but it would slow them, make them cautious, give the group time to escape. As the sun rose, they gathered at the far end of the canyon. Beyond lay another mile of rough country, then the Rio de las Palomas. Mexico. Freedom. They could see the river from here, a silver line in the morning light. "We're close," Nietzsche said. "So close. But Dutch is closer." Kuruk pointed east, dust cloud rising. "They're coming." Tom counted. More dust than yesterday, at least a dozen riders, maybe 15. Dutch had brought everyone he could find. This was it, the final confrontation. "Everyone to the river," Tom ordered. "Now, I'll trigger the traps as they come through, then follow." "You'll be trapped," Nietzsche protested. "I'll be fine. I know every bolt hole in this canyon. I can slip through after." Tom handed her his rifle. "But you need to go. Get your family across that river. Don't wait for me. Just go." "Tom." "Go." He pushed her gently. "I'll see you in Mexico. I promise." Nietzsche looked like she wanted to argue, but Dakota called to her in Apache, sharp and commanding. She reluctantly turned, helped get the travois moving. The group started west toward the river, toward safety. Tom watched them go, then turned to face east, toward the dust cloud, toward the soldiers, toward Captain Henry Crow and whatever fate awaited. He'd made a lot of mistakes in his life. Let fear control him, let good people die, let his wife be murdered while he hid. But today, right now, he was making a choice, standing his ground, protecting people who mattered. If this was his last stand, at least it was for something worth standing for. The dust cloud grew closer. Tom could see individual riders now, could see Dutch in the lead, face twisted with rage, could see behind Dutch a figure on a white horse, tall, ramrod straight, cold blue eyes even at this distance. Captain Henry Crow had come personally. The hunter had arrived to finish his hunt. Tom gripped the rope that would trigger the first rock slide, waited, counted heartbeats, watched them enter the canyon, then smiled grimly. "Welcome to hell, gentlemen. Let me show you around." He pulled the rope. Thunder filled the canyon, and the final battle began. The rope went taut in Tom's hands. For one eternal second, nothing happened. Then physics took over. 2 tons of carefully stacked rock broke free from the canyon wall, roaring downward like the fist of God. The sound was apocalyptic. Thunder and breaking stone and the screams of horses as the avalanche hit. Tom didn't wait to see the damage. He was already running bent low, moving west through passages only he knew. Behind him came shouting chaos, the sharp crack of gunfire as panicked soldiers shot at shadows. The trap had worked, at least partially. He reached the second trigger point, grabbed the rope, looked back. Through the dust cloud he could see riders milling in confusion. 3 horses down, maybe 4, men scrambling for cover. But Crow was still mounted, still commanding, bringing order to chaos, with the cold efficiency Tom remembered. The captain pointed. Soldiers dismounted started picking their way through the rubble on foot, moving cautiously now, suspicious of every shadow. Good. Caution was slow. Slow gave Nietzsche's family time. Tom pulled the second rope. More rocks fell blocking another passage. A soldier's scream cut short. Tom felt sick but didn't stop. This was war. Ugly, necessary, no room for mercy. He ran. The third trap. The fourth. Each time buying minutes. Each time feeling the noose tighten as soldiers found alternate routes work their way closer. Tom was running out of canyon and running out of tricks. One more trap point, then nothing between him and the river but open ground. He reached the final position, a narrow gap where the canyon walls nearly touched. Perfect choke point. He'd piled brush here, soaked it with lamp oil from his supplies. One match would turn this into an inferno, filling the passage with smoke thick enough to blind and choke. Tom lit the match, tossed it into the brush. Flames caught instantly, roaring up. Smoke billowed black and toxic. Behind it he heard coughing, cursing. They'd have to wait for the fire to burn down or find another route. Either way, more time bought. Tom ran, burst out of the canyon's western mouth into blinding sunlight. Ahead, maybe 300 yards, the river glittered, and at the riverbank his heart stopped. Nietzsche's group hadn't crossed. They were still on the American side, waiting. Tom sprinted toward them, legs burning. "Why are you still here? I told you to go." Nietzsche turned. Her face was defiant. "And leave you never." "The river is high," Dakota called from the travois. "Current too strong. The children can't swim it. We need help crossing." Tom looked at the Rio de las Palomas. The old man was right. Spring runoff had swollen it higher than normal. Maybe 50 feet across, moving fast, water brown with silt. Adults might manage. Children would drown. Dakota on his travois had no chance. "We need a rope," Tom said. "String it across. Use it to guide everyone over." "We have rope, but someone has to swim it across first. Anchor it on the far side." Niol looked at the churning water. "I can try." "No, I will." Tom was already untying his boots. "I'm stronger. Better chance." "You won't make it." Kuruk pointed at the water. "Look at the current. It'll sweep you downstream." "Then I'll swim downstream and work my way back. But we're out of time." Tom looked back at the canyon. Smoke was thinning. He could hear soldiers shouting, organizing, minutes away. "Give me the rope." Niol handed over 50 feet of hemp rope, good and thick. Tom tied one end around his waist, handed the other end to Niol. "When I reach the far side, I'll tie it to something solid, a tree or rock, then pull it tight and secure it this side. Use it as a guideline." "What if you don't make it?" Nietzsche's voice was small. Tom met her eyes. "Then you find another way. You don't give up. You get your family to safety. Promise me." "Tom, promise." "I promise." She stepped forward, kissed him quickly. Brief, fierce tasting of salt and fear. "But you better make it, blacksmith. We're not finished." Tom managed to smile. "No, we're not." Then he waded into the river. The water was shockingly cold snowmelt from mountains 100 miles north. It sucked the breath from his lungs. The current grabbed him immediately, trying to pull him under, sweep him away. Tom fought it, swimming with powerful strokes, angling downstream, using the current instead of fighting it. Halfway across, his boot struck a submerged rock. Pain exploded up his leg. He gasped, swallowed water, choked, went under. The world became brown murk and roaring pressure. The rope around his waist tightened as the current tried to drag him further. No, not like this. Not when they were so close. Tom kicked hard, found the bottom, pushed off. Broke surface, gasping. Saw the far bank closer now. 10 more feet. 8. 5. His fingers scraped mud, found purchase, pulled. He dragged himself onto Mexican soil, collapsed, coughing river water. Behind him, gunshots. Tom rolled over, saw soldiers emerging from the canyon. A dozen men spreading out along the riverbank. Crow on his white horse surveying the scene like a general on a battlefield. Dutch beside him pointing at Tom, shouting something. Tom forced himself up, found a sturdy cottonwood tree 10 feet from the bank, tied the rope around it, yanked it 3 times. Signal. Secure. On the American side, Neil and Karuk pulled the rope taut, tied their end to a boulder. The line hung suspended over the water just above the surface in the middle. Not perfect, but functional. A guideline. A chance. Ayana went first, holding the rope with both hands, the two children clinging to her. She moved sideways, careful testing each step. The water rose to her chest, then her neck. The current tried to tear her away, but she held on, kept moving. Made it across, pulled the children up onto the bank. Safe. Tom helped them up, grabbed the children, moved them behind the tree. Stay down. Don't move. More gunshots. Bullets kicked up dirt around Tom. He pressed himself against the tree, using it for cover. Looked back across the river. Neol and Karuk were preparing Dakota's travois for the crossing. This would be the hardest. The old man couldn't hold the rope himself. Crow's voice rang out across the water, cold and clear. Thomas Brennan. That's far enough. You're harboring fugitives. Send them back and we'll let you live. Tom didn't answer. Actions spoke louder than words. Crow tried again. You think Mexico makes you safe? I have friends in the Mexican army. They'll hand you over within the week. Maybe true. Maybe a bluff. Either way, it didn't matter. Right now, getting everyone across alive was all that mattered. Politics could wait. Neol and Karuk entered the water, supporting the travois between them. Dakota lay flat, gripping the sides. The current hit them immediately. The travois tried to swing sideways, caught by the water like a sail catching wind. Karuk stumbled, nearly went under. Neol grabbed him, steadied him. They kept moving. Soldiers on the bank were aiming now, taking their time, preparing to fire. Tom had no weapon, no way to provide covering fire. He could only watch helplessly as the three men struggled across. Then Naichi did something brave and stupid and magnificent. She walked to the edge of the American bank, stood fully exposed, and started singing, a high, clear voice, an Apache song. Tom didn't understand the words, but he felt them. A mourning song, a warrior's song, a song for the dead and those who would join them soon. Every soldier turned to look at her, even Crow. She stood there alone, small against the vast landscape, singing defiance, drawing every eye, every weapon. Tom understood. She was making herself the target, keeping attention off Neol, Karuk, and Dakota, offering herself if it meant they'd make it. Naiche, no. Tom breathed, but he couldn't call out without drawing attention back to the crossing. Crow raised his hand. Soldiers took aim. A dozen rifles pointed at one unarmed woman. Crow's voice cut through her song. Stop singing, girl. Last warning. Naichi sang louder. Your choice. Crow dropped his hand. Fire. The rifles spoke as one, a thunderclap of murder. Tom's heart stopped, but Naichi was already moving, diving behind the boulder where the rope was tied. Bullets spanged off stone. She rolled, came up unhurt, kept singing from cover, still drawing fire, still buying time. And it worked. Neol and Karuk reached the Mexican side. Tom grabbed the travois, helped pull Dakota up the bank. The old man was soaked, shivering, but alive. Tom moved him behind the cottonwood with the children. One more, Tom said. Just Naichi. As if hearing her name, Naichi stopped singing, looked across the river. Their eyes met. She smiled, then grabbed the rope and swung onto it. Stop her, Crow's voice. Don't let her cross. Soldiers rushed the riverbank. Dutch waded into the water, pistol in hand. Naichi was halfway across, moving hand over hand, feet kicking. The current battered her. Dutch was gaining, closing the distance. Tom looked around desperately for anything to use as a weapon. Saw a fallen branch, grabbed it. Not much, but better than nothing. He waded back into the river branch, held like a club. Dutch saw him coming, raised his pistol. Tom dove under just as Dutch fired. The bullet went wide. Tom came up swinging. The branch connected with Dutch's gun hand. The pistol went flying into the current. Dutch roared, lunged at Tom. They grappled in waist-deep water. Dutch was strong, trained, brutal. He drove a fist into Tom's kidney. Pain exploded. Tom gasped, knees buckling. Dutch grabbed his head, tried to force him under water, drown him. Tom found Dutch's burned face with his fingers pressed hard into the scar tissue. Dutch screamed, "Let go." Tom surged up, drove his forehead into Dutch's nose. Cartilage crunched. Blood flowed. Dutch staggered back. Tom didn't pursue. Turned, saw Nietzsche 20 feet away, still on the rope. "Come on!" She reached him. He grabbed her, pulled her toward the Mexican bank. Behind them, Dutch was recovering other soldiers entering the water. Rifles firing. Bullets everywhere. They reached the bank. Niol and Kuruk pulled them up. The group huddled behind the cottonwood as gunfire chewed the landscape around them. Casa was crying. Ellen covered his ears. Dakota held them both, his body shielding theirs. "We can't stay here," Kuruk said. "They'll cross. They'll kill us all." "No, they won't." A new voice. Tom turned. Lieutenant James Hayes stood 30 feet away, rifle in hand, but not pointing at them, pointing back across the river, at Crow. "Stand down, Captain," Hayes called. "They're in Mexico. You have no jurisdiction." Crow's face went purple. "Hayes, what the hell do you think you're doing?" "My job upholding the law. You've crossed the line, sir. This isn't about security. This is murder." Hayes's voice shook but held firm. "I won't be part of it anymore." "You're relieved Sergeant Dutch arrest that man." But Dutch was still in the river, clutching his bleeding nose, and the other soldiers, Tom realized, weren't moving. They stood, frozen rifles lowered, looking at each other uncertainly. One spoke up. Young kid, maybe 19. "Lieutenant Hayes is right, Captain. They're in Mexico. We can't touch them. That's the law." "I decide what the law is." Crow's voice was pure rage now. "Anyone who doesn't follow orders will hang. Now cross that river and bring me those Apache." Nobody moved. Crow looked around at his men, saw mutiny in their faces, saw that he'd finally pushed too far. Asking them to commit massacre was one thing when they could pretend it was war. But crossing an international border to murder refugees, that was something else. That was obviously, undeniably wrong. Crow's hand went to his pistol. For a moment Tom thought the captain would shoot his own men, but even Crow had limits. He holstered the weapon, face twisted with hate. "This isn't over, Brennan," he shouted across the water. "You hear me? This isn't over. I'll find you. If it takes months, years, I'll find you. And when I do, you'll beg for death." Tom stood, stepped into view. "Then you better find me fast, Crow, because every day I'm alive is another day. People know what you did, know what kind of monster you are. You can kill me, but you can't kill the truth." Crow stared at him with eyes like frozen death, then wheeled his horse and rode away. Dutch followed, still bleeding. Most of the soldiers went with them, but a few remained, including Hayes. The young lieutenant crossed the river, waded up to Tom. "You made it. Thanks to you." Tom extended his hand. Hayes shook it. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. Should have done it 3 years ago. At that village." Hayes looked at the Apache family. "I'm sorry. For everything. For all of it." Dakota spoke in Apache. Nietzsche translated. "My uncle says apologies don't bring back the dead, but they're a start. He says you have honor. That's rare in soldiers." Hayes nodded, accepting the limited forgiveness. "What will you do now?" "Head deeper into Mexico, find a place to settle. Live." Tom looked at Nietzsche. "Together." "Good." Hayes turned to go, paused. "Brennan Crow meant what he said. He'll come after you. He's not the kind to forgive." "Neither am I." Tom smiled grimly. "But I've got something he doesn't. People worth protecting. That makes me dangerous." Hayes rode away. The last few soldiers followed. Soon the American bank was empty. Silent. The hunt was over. For now. 3 months later. A small village in Chihuahua, northern Mexico. Tom worked the bellows in a forge he'd built with his own hands. Simple structure, open to the air but functional. The anvil rang as he shaped a plow blade for a local farmer. Honest work. Good work. The kind that left him tired and satisfied at day's end. "Tom," Nietzsche's voice, "come see." He set down the hammer, wiped sweat from his face, stepped outside. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Naichi stood in the doorway of their small adobe house. Behind her, Tom could see Ayana teaching the children to weave baskets. Could hear Takota's voice telling stories, his leg finally healed enough to walk with only a slight limp. Neol and Kuruk had left last month, heading further south to find their own paths, but they'd promised to return. Family didn't abandon family, Neol had said. Not anymore. Naichi held something in her hands. Tom came closer and she showed him. An iron rose, perfectly formed, each petal individually forged and welded. She'd been working on it for weeks, practicing the techniques he'd taught her. Now it was finished. "It's beautiful," Tom said honestly. "It's for you." She handed it to him. "You gave me your protection when I had nothing. You gave me your trust. You gave me back my family. This is how I say thank you." Tom held the rose, feeling its weight, its perfect balance. "Iron doesn't bloom." "It does now," Naichi smiled. "You taught me that. Hard things can still be beautiful. Broken things can still be whole. And sometimes the strongest bonds are forged in the hottest fires." Tom pulled her close, kissed her properly. She melted into him, and the world fell away. Just two people who'd found each other in ashes and built something new from the ruins. When they separated, Tom said, "Marry me." Naichi laughed. "We're already married, Apache way. You just didn't notice." "Then marry me the white man's way too, so there's no confusion." "All right, blacksmith. I'll marry you twice if it makes you happy." They walked back to the house together. Inside, Takota was finishing a story. The children clapped. Ayana was preparing dinner, some kind of stew that smelled amazing. It was loud, chaotic, imperfect. It was home. Tom knew Crow was still out there, knew the captain would keep hunting, maybe forever. But let him come. This time Tom wouldn't be alone. This time he had people to fight for, people to live for. And that made all the difference. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Tom stood in the doorway. Naichi beside him, the iron rose in his hand. He'd come to these mountains 3 years ago to die slowly, to hide from his failures, to fade away into nothing. Instead, he'd found everything, found purpose, found family, found love, found himself. And he'd found peace with Sarah's memory. She'd always said guilt was a cage you built yourself. Time to walk free. He didn't need forgiveness from the dead, they'd already given it. What he needed was to forgive himself. And standing here with Naichi beside him and family inside, he finally could. The forge fire glowed in the gathering darkness. The sound of laughter echoed from inside the house. And Thomas Brennan, former soldier, former hermit, former coward, finally understood what it meant to be truly alive. Not survival, not hiding, but standing in the light scars and all daring the world to take away what you'd fought so hard to build. Let Crow come. Let the whole damned army come. Tom had learned to forge iron. Now he'd forged something stronger. A family. A future. A reason to wake up fighting every single day. That was worth any price. Worth any danger. Worth everything. He looked at the iron rose in his hand. Symbol of impossible beauty created from raw strength. Symbol of what he and Naichi had built together. Iron didn't bloom, but love did, even in the hardest hearts, even in the darkest times, especially then. Tom smiled, tucked the rose into his pocket over his heart, and walked inside to join his family for dinner. Outside, the stars emerged one by one. The desert breathed, and somewhere in the darkness, a new chapter was beginning. Not an ending, a beginning. The best kind. The kind you had to fight for. The kind worth keeping. The kind that lasted.